Transparency in Illustrator provides a way for you to make objects interact with one another. Transparency not only allows you to alter the opacity of objects, it also allows you to change the blending mode of objects as well. Let's take a look at how all of this works inside of Illustrator. I'm beginning this video with the transparency.ai file already open on my machine. And I just have some basic artwork here that we're going to modify using different transparency effects. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to this tree that's in the foreground, and I'm just going to click on the trunk of the tree, and then I'll shift click to click on the triangle portion. And I'm just going to Option or Alt drag to make a copy of this. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my Shape Builder tool, very trusted tool here. I'm just going to drag across to combine this into one cohesive shape. Go back to my selection tool, and I'm going to come up to my swatches panel, and I'm going to choose black as the color. And I'm going to move this back down and align it with the original tree. And now I'm going to make some adjustments to it. So let's grab our scale tool. I'm going to click down here at the bottom of the shape to make that my transformation point. And then I'm just going to shift click to scale this down to a smaller size. Then I'm going to grab my shear tool, and using the same transformation point, I'm just going to click and drag from left to right and maybe drag down a little bit to create kind of a shadow that I'd like to cast below this tree. I'm going to go to Object Arrange and choose Send Backward. Choose that a couple of times here. And we can see that the shadow for the tree is now behind the trunk of the tree, and that's exactly what we want. Now, transparency can be adjusted using the transparency panel. Now, I'm just going to go back to my selection tool here and make sure that this shadow is still selected. And I'm going to open up my transparency panel. And as you can see, we have this shape selected, and it shows me this shape inside of the transparency panel. Now, one way that I could make this shadow interact with objects beneath it is to adjust the opacity. So I'm going to click on the drop-down menu. Maybe I'll start with about 50%. Now, if we click off of it, we can kind of see that the shadow is now interacting with the background there, and it really gives it a little bit of depth because I can see the color transitions in there. But the other thing I can do is I can alter the blending mode. Now, to show you this, I'm going to select the shadow. And the blending modes are located up here in this drop-down menu. Now, you have several different blending modes, and to describe them to you is going to be a fairly lengthy process. If you really want to know the detailed description, you can go to the Illustrator help file, and it will describe all of these for you. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by choosing Darken from the list. Now, you'll notice in our artwork, not a whole lot has changed. Let's go ahead and choose the next one, Multiply. Still not a whole lot of change. Color Burn, Lighten. There we have a little bit of change, but it pretty much disappears. Go to Screen, Color Dodge, Overlay. As you can see, there's not a lot of changes happening. And if you ever notice this as you're changing your blending modes, usually it's due to the color that you're applying the blending mode to. And that's the situation you run into when using black. Because black, often when it's interacting with another color, either won't have much of a change, or it'll just disappear altogether. So we can try these different blending modes, but as you can see, not a whole lot is happening in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to normal, and I'll just leave the opacity. Maybe we'll drop it down to 40%. We get a nice looking appearance there. That'll work for what we're trying to do. Now, to understand the blending modes, what I'm going to do is just move my artboard over a little bit, and I'm going to draw two squares on my page. Maybe I'll draw one and then just copy another one. And let's fill the first one with maybe a light green here. And then the second one, I'm going to fill with maybe a medium orange. So I've got two separate shapes here, as you can see. And the way that blending modes work is that it utilizes two different colors. And we have the base color, which is the color that's at the bottom of the stacking order. And then we have the blend color, which is the color that we're applying the blending mode to. So let's try this again. Go to your transparency panel And I'm going to choose darken. Okay, there we go. We had a bit of a difference here. We can see where the color is interacting with the 2. We now get a third color. And as you can see, this is live. No matter where I move this, it's going to change to update the effect. Let's go ahead and choose multiply. There we go. Color burn. Lighten. You can see we're getting very different results now. And if we go ahead and go to screen, color dodge, overlay, soft light, you can see soft light doesn't really change a whole lot in this example. But what happens if we change the blend color to something different? Let's go ahead and go with, say, a blue. Well, now we have a little bit of a different color. Maybe go with a darker blue, go with a red. You can see there we have a significantly more different change than we saw before. So the point here is that your blending mode is really dependent upon the color that you're applying the blending mode to and the color that it's interacting with. And so often the best way to choose an appropriate blending mode for your situation is to just experiment. So I'm going to select both of those and delete them, and then I'll press Command 0 on Mac or Control 0 on Windows to go back to my artwork. Now again, to show you this, what I'm going to do is make a copy of this cloud, and maybe I'll just drag one of the handles over to kind of flip it. Maybe we'll even flip it in this direction too, give it a little bit of a different shape. And I'm going to let these clouds overlap each other a little bit. Maybe I'll even make a couple of clouds here. Try to change the way they look, distort them a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this topmost cloud. And if you reduce the opacity, I'll go ahead and set it to 60%, you can see how these clouds are starting to show through one another. Go ahead and click on this one. Let's maybe make this about 20%. Yeah, it's a little lighter in there. And we can see how they're now interacting with one another. I'll change their shape a little bit more. And we can see how transparency and adjusting the opacity allows me to really create some cool visual effects in here. Combine this with some blending modes, and now we've got some really interesting effects that we're starting to create. Experiment all you wish to create different effects. Now, one of the places where blending modes are really prevalent that a lot of people aren't really aware of is when you draw what's called a lens flare. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to click on my rectangle tool. You'll notice down here we have the flare tool. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to click and drag with this flare tool. And when I let go and I click off of this, you'll see the really great appearance that the flare tool provides to me. Now, the one mistake that a lot of users make is they'll use this flare tool on like an all-white area, maybe on a blank artboard. And it doesn't really look like a whole lot when you do it on plain white because there's no blending that's occurring. But when you apply the flare tool over a colored object, you get this really great effect. Now, to see what I mean, what I'm going to do is click on my selection tool and I'm going to click on the flare to make it active. And I'm going to go to the object menu and I'm going to choose expand. And I'm going to expand the object, fill, and stroke. We'll go ahead and click OK. And then I'll go to object and choose ungroup. Now, if I click off of this, I should be able to click on some of these individual components. And I'm going to open up the appearance panel. So you can see that the component that I have selected is set to the screen mode at 3%. So just so I can go in here, I'm going to click on some other options. You can see this is set to the screen blend mode at 50%. And as you click on the different objects in here, you're going to get even different results as well. So the whole point of this is to just show you that the way that Illustrator achieves this really cool lens flare is using a combination of different blending modes on your artwork. I hope that you now have a better understanding of how transparency works in Illustrator and how you might apply transparency and blending to your own artwork as well. More than anything, experimentation is often the key to getting the look that you desire.